In what sick, cruel world do you have to rotate a bone to get a sentry to point to something? I could not fathom that. No, I could not even imagine that. No, that's terrible. Nah, man, these ports are like guaranteed to make you hate animating sentries. Less, like 1000% less. Okay. To summarize, the sentries, the dispensers, the teleporters, the building gibs, and the toolboxes have all been ported. I'll show you how to set it up at the very end. But to start with the sentries, generally they all have a very similar control scheme. You have this cross to get the sentry to point to somewhere, which you can also pivot with these arrows down here for like an easy scanning motion. You can roll the sentry for like that puppy head tilt. You have sliders for animation, one for a firing motion, one for a single shot, which is only for the level 1 and mini sentries, and you have one for a blank shot. Wrangling a sentry is as simple as dragging a slider. In fact, so is activating a muzzle flash, which you can loop, showing a sapper, or the sapper outline. Building buildings is also very easy. All you have to do is drag this slider down. Let's keyframe that actually. Keyframe its location here, and how long is it to build a sentry? Like 5 seconds? I don't know. Drag it all the way down, keyframe it, and then set the interpolation between these two keyframes to linear. Yeah, that's not bad. Most of the visual effects have properties that you can mess with in the modifiers panel. Like if you wanted more particles on the Wrangler shield, you can increase the particle count, you can make them move slower or faster, maybe too fast. You can adjust its random rotation. Or for the muzzle flash, you can make it wider, increase the particle count, and the length. Whoa. Real quick, regarding the muzzle flash, if you plan to use cycles, you may notice these black artifacts, especially when you use a high particle count. That's caused by having too many transparent images stacking on top of each other, so you can resolve it by going to the light paths in cycles and increasing the maximum transparent bounces. Anyways, let's move on to the specifics. There are 2 types of the Sentry at level 3, one with its rocket box rigged with inverse kinematics, which can be really good with expressing emotions. And the other one, its rocket box can be animated by dragging this slider. It's just the recharge animation. You can hide the rockets by dragging this rocket-shaped icon. The lights on the mini sentries are animated by default so that they're consistent across different frame rates, but you can adjust the offset by selecting them, go to the modifier panel, and adjust the offset. The light flashes are a little trickier to select, but this is good for variation. You can animate a set of rockets by selecting the armature, going to the NLA editor, and adding a flying rocket strip. The default is 24 frames, we're at 60, scale by 2.5 times, and should look good. Yes. I think that's all for the sentries, so let's move on to the dispensers. There is not a lot to talk about here. They're dispensers. I mean, you have the ammo sliders, which is basically it. On the level 3 dispensers, you can offset the heartbeat or the pulse. There's got to be a word for that. You can offset it by going to the custom properties and adjusting pulse offset. If you want variation, there you have it. Now the teleporters are probably my favorite because they have this super cool way of animating themselves. But I'll get to that in just a bit. On the entrance teleporters, you have this arrow slider to activate the arrow, and you can point it around in different directions. But on all of the teleporters, you can fade in the teleporter field, you can enable the blurry version of the model, and you can transition in the trails for the teleporters. So there are 2 ways to animate the teleporter, manually and automatically. Manually is by selecting these T-bones and just spinning it. The trails will follow these bones. The automatic way is carried out through this really cool geometry node group that I built. I mean, that is so cool. Now in this automatic way, there are 2 ways to set the rotation speed of the teleporter. One way is by setting speed input to user-defined speed, where you can adjust the speed with this slider, make it faster or go reverse. And the other way is by setting speed input to preset speed, where you have 6 different speeds that you can swap between. Speed 1, speed 4, full stop, and this of course can be animated. How fast it transitions between different speeds is entirely dependent on whatever transition mix is set to. Higher values will result in an instant transition, and lower values, like really low, probably that low, will conserve more momentum, making it take much longer to transition between different speeds. You know, it's not that hard to use. As you've probably noticed already, the automatic way produces its own trails, which you can adjust the length of. So just keep that in mind if you use this trail slider, that they will conflict. Lastly, we have the building Gibs and the toolbox. These aren't too unique. I think the only thing you'd be remotely interested in is how to apply physics to the Gibs, which I will show you how to do right now. Okay, let's spawn in red sentry level 1 Gibs, add a surface for it to react with, rigid body, passive, low collision margin. So prepping the Gibs for physics, the first step you want to take is to select all the underlying children, Alt-P, and clear parent and keep transformation. Then you can delete the armature, select all the Gibs, and apply scale. Now we can add rigid body physics for 1, collision margin to 0, and copy to active, or copy from active. Now if we set the frame rate to 30 and play it, look at that, it explodes. Maybe up the friction a little bit. That's a little better. Downloading these is so easy. You just select all the files and download them, put them in a folder somewhere on your hard drive. When you have put them in a folder, add that folder into Optiploy. I think the spawning settings you'll enjoy most with Optiploy is to enable override behavior and localize collections, objects, mesh data, materials. I think that would be your favorite combo. Anyways, now we can spawn them at will. Everything works like normal. That's it. That was fast. That is how to use the building ports, how to install them. I hope you make really cool stuff with this. Tag me if you do. Nah, you don't have to tag me though. I just like to see what you make. Okay, that's it. Take care.